SCP-1861 is a phenomena in which a certain location on the globe is suddenly struck by a heavy fog and rain, consisting of seawater, human bones, and blood. Whenever this phenomena occurs, a vessel appears at the exact same time and location, submerging out of any body of water that is capable of holding its surface area, be it a swimming pool, puddle, or lake. From this vessel, known as SCP-1861-A, figures dressed in deep diving gear emerge. These are the instances of SCP-1861-B. These instances' primary goal seems to be to convince other humans to join them in the vessel. However, Foundation personnel realize this would only surely result in death for those individuals. Numerous attempts have been made by the Foundation to obtain information from these instances. On the 21st of February, another SCP-1861 sighting occurred, and a team of D-Class units were sent out to interview instances of SCP-1861-B. When D-1861-45 entered the scene, he suddenly found himself alone and in a heavy fog. To the left and right, there was nothing but that misty fog that seemed to have a reddish hue to it. D-1861-45 walked forward, and then he shaded his eyes as he thought he could discern a figure in the distance. Sure enough, the figure grew larger as it approached him, and then an instance of SCP-1861-B appeared. D-1861-45 could not see the instance's face, but when it spoke, he immediately recognized its voice. "Sal?" asked D-1861-45.
"Mike, it's me,"
the instance replied. "What? You've been gone for 6 months. Where have you been?"
"Well, it's a long story."
"I have time." D-1861-45 then sat on the steps of a nearby store and asked the instance to join him. The instance, aka Sal, the missing member of the D-Class unit that had been sent out and destroyed 6 months prior, agreed to join D-1861-45 and sat on the step beside him. He explained his story to D-1861-45, who was recording the whole thing on his camera device.
"When our boat got capsized, those people in the suits found us underwater and dragged us over to their vessel. We had no choice but to follow them inside. I know, probably not the best idea, but it was either join them in the vessel or take our chances out on the ocean. We chose to enter the vessel."
"And then what happened?" asked D-1861-45.
"Inside, it's way bigger than it looks on the outside. There are tons of rooms and hallways all filled with the guys in the diving suits. When I got in, there were only a few people who weren't wearing the suits. As soon as we were settled down, the vessel seemed to start moving and seemed like we were traveling. Then one of the guys who had helped me into the ship told me to put a suit on. I asked him why, and he said, it's to save your life. So, I don't know, I just did it. You know, this guy's telling me to put a suit on to save my life, and everyone's doing it, so I did it. Other people had kids and pets with them, and they were cramming them into the suit with them to keep them alive. Then, once we were all in our suits, the vessel just stopped all of a sudden. There weren't any windows, so I couldn't see outside, but without any warning, the sub started filling up with water.
Wait, they tried to drown you?
I don't know, man. The water just kept rising higher and higher. People were screaming and panicking and knocking each other over. It was awful. The guys in the diving suits tried to keep everyone calm, explaining it was part of safety procedures. They gave out diving suits to the rest of us and ordered us to put them on, so we did. I mean, what choice did we have? People who brought their kids and pets were cramming them into the suits just to keep them from drowning to death.
Makes sense. So, I guess you were all trapped down there for a whole nother 6 months until the next blood rain thing happened?
Actually, we didn't have to wait very long at all. That's where things started getting really weird. Once everyone had the diving suits on, they opened the airlock and started letting people leave the sub. They said we could step out into the new world. That's what they called it.
And then?
And then it was crazy. When I stepped out onto the surface, everything looked almost exactly like it had an hour ago. I saw the lake, the trees, the boathouses. Everything was where it had been. But I want to say that it was like everything was underwater, but it was more than that. It was like everything around us was part of the water itself. When you looked up, you didn't see a surface. It just went on forever. And the trees, the boathouses, they weren't solid, they were just a different sort of liquid. Even when you stood on the ground, it was kind of like you were swimming in it, because the ground was liquid. Except you didn't actually have to swim, and even though everything was water, you could still tell there was a lake there. As if the lake was a purer form of liquidness. Sorry, am I making any sense at all here?
Not really. That's okay though. How long were you guys out there like that?
The whole 6 months. We lived like that day and night.
Did you see any animals or other people?
Kinda. We'd see their bodies. They'd float 3 or 4 feet off the ground, and their hair and fur would move like it does when it's underwater. But they always kept their position. Didn't drift away or anything like that. It's really weird over there, man. And all the dead things, humans and animals, were missing their eyes. Blood would just keep pumping non-stop from the sockets and then dissipate into the water around them. And their teeth. I can't just say their teeth were gone because that doesn't begin to cover it. It was like someone took a bite out of their face right where their mouth should have been. Teeth, lips, gums, all gone.
And no explanation from anyone? What did the guys who had led you into the sub have to say about all this? The instance seemed to be uncomfortable.
A lot of them said they had the same story we did. The blood rain came, then someone in a suit told them to climb into the sub, then bam, water world. There was this one guy though, he said he was the original captain of the sub. Herschel Guthrie of the HMS Wintersheimer was how he introduced himself. Anyway, the guy was a loony one, rarely ever spoke coherently. If you asked him about the sub, he'd call it his Ark. If you asked him about the water place, he would call it the New World.
Did anyone try taking their suits off?
They told us not to. They said we couldn't breathe without the suits. But, of course, some people didn't trust them. But as soon as someone took their helmet off, their bodies sort of, I think dissolve would be the best word for it. They weren't solid anymore. They kind of turned into a mist and merged with the water that was all around us. They lost their shape, but you could still tell they were there, shapeless and floating.
The instance paused mid-speech. What is it?
Asked D-1861-45. There's something you should know.
The instance replied.
While I was there, I saw your body. You were floating there, with your eyeballs missing and your teeth. It wasn't like your teeth were missing. It was like someone or something had taken a huge bite out of your face. So your whole mouth, lips, teeth, everything was gone. And it wasn't just you. There were tons of our people. Some I didn't recognize just floating there. Animals too. They told us this is what happened to the rest of the world. We were the lucky ones. I really started believing them. But now I'm here.
The instance paused for a total of 15 seconds and said nothing. Then he spoke.
I'm just so scared. If I'm not human, what am I? If I take this helmet off, what'll I see?
Another 10 seconds of silence. Then,
before, when we were in that storm together, the guys in the suits told us that we'd die as soon as the rain stopped. And you know what? I thought maybe those guys were right. Maybe everyone else really is dead. And here you are in front of me. I don't get it. I don't know what's real, man.
Sal, why don't you take off the suit now? Asked D-1861-45.
I shouldn't. They told me this is what's keeping me alive.
Maybe, but you're back now. You should be fine now. The instance seemed to ponder for several seconds, and then he came to a conclusion.
Okay, I'll do it.
The instance stood up and slowly brought his hands to his helmet. D-1861-45 watched as the instance turned his helmet, and a click ensued, followed by something that sounded like gas. The instance lifted the helmet, then suddenly a ton of seawater gushed out, followed by 2 eyeballs and some teeth. D-1861-45 reared back in horror. Later, the 2 eyeballs were identified as a 9-year-old boy's, and the teeth were tested as belonging to a Persian cat. The rest of the diving suit was empty, except for some traces of seawater. So what did you think of that SCP case? Comment your thoughts below, and be sure to subscribe and give this video a huge thumbs up. Hit that notification bell too so you don't miss out on any more creepy SCP cases.